first time I saw Gene perform live was approximately 1965 in the UK. My older brother had all these records, and I discovered Gene Vincent through the records and things like that. Some friends of mine said, Gene's in town. He's living in the UK at the time, but he's local. Do you want to come and see him? So of course I went along with him, and he put on this show. He was with a band called the Shouts then. And I say he was living in the UK. And I just see this man, this crazy guy sort of jumping around and the black leathers, and I was kind of hooked from then on. That was Gene was my hero. I kind of turned me on to wanting to be a singer. It wasn't until years later that I actually became a singer, you know. But Gene had this kind of, I don't know, it was kind of related to myself, I guess. The moody kind of black leather thing. I was into motorbikes anyway at the time, so I guess with the black leather thing, he kind of suited the rocker image that we portrayed with the motorbikes. Gene didn't wear them till he come to the UK because Jack Good inspired the leather image. Before that, Gene used to wear flashy shirts or jackets or different things, and he kind of made him that more fierce for the British public, really. Well, it was actually 1970. We went to do the early part of the year, our manager had said to us about your hero, Gene Vincent. You won't believe it, but we're going to be doing a tour in France in June 1970 with Gene Vincent. Of course, I didn't believe it. I thought, what? And I was convinced, showed me the contracts and that. So, of course, I got the telephone to my mum and dad, and I said, guess what, I'm going to be working with Gene Vincent. And it was kind of like, I didn't believe it until we actually were in Paris, and we were there earlier, and then this car arrived from the airport, and until we actually saw Gene get out of this car and shake hands with us and come into the hotel, I didn't believe it until that time. And after that, it was kind of like, wow, you know. And we done this tour.
And did the Houseshakers practice with Gene before going on tour?
Oh yes, we did. Yeah, we knew a lot of the numbers, and I think we were sent a set list of this kind of stuff he would be going to do anyway. And I guess half that set was stuff we already done in our own act. I had to have a couple of reminders saying, when we do the show, don't do any songs by Gene Vincent, because the man is going to be on the show. So we changed the set around a little bit and just left out the songs that we do by Gene Vincent. Yes, I think we didn't actually rehearse until we got to one of the first gigs, and there was this room behind this. It was like an open air show. I'm not sure the name of the place, but I know it was a couple of 100 miles from Paris. It was an open air show, and there was this old chateau in the background, and we had this room, this empty room in this old building where we sat, and I think we just run through a few things, and we'd done a sound check and run through before the people were coming in. One pointer I will mention, that I actually was in there alone with Gene at one time. He was strumming a guitar, and I happened to say to Gene, I said, one of the ballads I always admired of yours, I said, was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And he sang a couple of verses of this, strumming this guitar, and I was just sitting there, and I just felt these shivers down my spine, and not realising that years later I'd have a hit record in the UK doing Somewhere Over the Rainbow in 1980.
And what was your role as singer for the Houseshakers when the band performed with Gene?
What would I be doing? Hanging around, looking at girls, whatever, you know, just watching Gene, of course, because he was my hero. I actually, there was an incident where I actually got told off by my manager because I was signing autographs while I was standing in the audience on the side of the stage. Girls and people were coming up and I was signing autographs, and the manager kind of told me off and said, oh, it's a bit kind of not professional to sign it, and I was pretty upset about this. So later on, because I assumed that Gene would be angry, so I went along to see him in the hotel, and I explained it, and he was totally, hell man, what are you worried about? He said, I couldn't give a damn. He said, if you're going to get a piece of the action, go ahead, be my guest. And after that, it was great, you know. We got on famously. he would be driven around by a chauffeur, you know, and he's French. I had this big French guy we called the Gorilla because he was big and hairy, and he was driving Gene around like in a Citroen or whatever this small car was. But he would be tired. He'd travelling around, and this guy would get tired and he'd be driving Gene. And then one morning, it was early hours, and we was travelling back from somewhere, and we was in this bus, and we see him on the side of the road. We pulled in this like lay-by, and Gene, we pulled out to see what was wrong, and Gene was saying, "This guy's tired. He's fallen asleep at the wheel, and he drives fast. This crazy guy." He said, "I want to travel with you guys." And after that, Gene would travel in the bus with us rather than with his other guy. And he was so funny. There were so many things, you know. "Good morning, you tossers," you know, or "you wankers," or whatever, you know. And it would be just Gene's bit of fun, you know. And he was in such good spirits. Once he's travelling in the bus with us, he had some fun times. And then we was at one hotel, and he's got this daily paper, English daily paper. He was managed by Don Arden at one time, you know, Ozzy's wife's. And he'd seen this article on Don Arden, and he'd seen Gene's face go from... This particular tour in France, unfortunately, was no disrespect to anybody that run it. I mean, we was only pretty young then, and it started off great, but I think the guy was a fan, and he was doing the promotion bit. Although his intentions were good, the tour eventually run out of money. And I think the chap's father, the guy's father who was putting money into it, kind of put a stop to the tour. So the last couple of shows, because Gene didn't get paid, we done the show, but Gene didn't. There was a lot of that. There was a place in France called Lons-le-Saunier. But there was a riot broke out, and it was a room that was mainly stone, and they started setting fire to cardboard and paper and boxes in protest, these French fans, because Gene didn't appear. They didn't give us a hard time at all. They were kind of quite happy with the stuff we was doing, but they was angry because Gene didn't appear. And then, of course, they was chanting "Kill the manager" and all this. When we went to the stage door to go out, there was hundreds of people out there, really angry French fans. So we called one of the bigger guys in as a spokesman who could speak English, and he came in and he explained why they were angry and all this. And we kind of explained to him what happened and all that. And he went out again, explained to the fans what was about, and we were really cool, man. We was like, no problem with these guys at all. And they let us come out the building. The only thing is they let the van down, the tyres down on our bus, which later on they felt very bad about it. The next morning they come back and they took one by one each of the tyres and blew them up and brought them back and fit them back on the bus. And that was kind of quite amusing, really. But they were still pretty angry that Gene didn't appear, although in respect, Gene didn't get paid. Gene was one of the nicest people you can meet when he hadn't had a drink, but when he'd had a drink, he was like a changed person. And he kind of got a bit sharp with us a couple of times, and especially producers and like, you know, managers and especially promoters.
About the picture?
This picture was taken in France in June 1970. I just we'd stopped off to have a coffee or something, and I just asked Gene to have a picture taken. So there we were. That's one of the several pictures I had taken with Gene. He had this thing about not getting paid, especially more so on the UK tour. He was kind of, if the money didn't arrive in time or something, he would be pacing up and down, want my money. If somebody give him a cheque, like there was a time in Swansea University, we'd done this gig with him, and end of the show, the social secretary from the college come in and said, "There's your cheque," that's for me and the Houseshakers, "and there's a cheque for Gene, can you give that to him?" And we said, "No, his dressing room's down there, you give it to him. And he's going, oh, why is that? Just give it to him. We knew that he wanted cash. So we've all listened by the door, and this guy's gone down like this, I don't want a goddamn fucking check. And he's thrown this check, torn this check up and thrown it all up in pieces. And this guy's come out there like white as a sheet. So I had this 1959 Chevy Impala. It's my first big American car I had, and I was just getting used to the thing. So I had to go to Hersham, this hotel, to pick Gene up. He was in the back of my car. There's something not right. Suddenly we heard him choking and coughing. Marcia said something about, Gene, we better go to the hospital, it's your ulcer. And to that minute I saw in my mirror Gene put his hand across Marcia's mouth to keep her quiet, because he didn't want anybody to know about this ulcer. And after that he started coughing, and he puked up blood and booze and whatever, all in the back of the car. And he was a bit delirious. We took him to the nearest hospital, and as we pulled up at the gates, Gene kind of looked up and see the word hospital, and he just freaked out. He just said, if you take me in there, you might as well say goodbye to the goddamn tour, that's it. So she said, and she pleaded with Gene to go in, but he said, no way, the tour's finished. If you take me in there, everything's finished. So we took him home, and then he fell asleep in the back of the car. I had to pick up Gene to do a radio show for, I don't know if you heard of he died sadly last year, a guy called Johnny Peel. Johnny was a nice guy, he was a big Gene Vincent fan. He actually recorded Gene for his Dandelion label at some stage. Well, we went to do this radio interview with John Peel, so I picked Gene up from the hotel, expecting the worst because I'd just cleaned the car out from Gene being sick in the back of the car. I spent all morning with a bucket of water, cleaned the car. I got to the hotel to pick Gene up, and he was in good spirits. He was bright, he was jolly, he was fun, as usual how he was, you know. Come out and he was, yeah, let's go for it. We've driven off to the Playhouse Theatre in London to record this TV show, this radio show for John Peel. And Gene afterwards came up and he said, I'm really sorry about your car. He said, I'll pay to have it cleaned and valeted properly. And I just said, I've done it. And he was kind of, we've done it? But he did offer me money to do it, but I didn't have the heart to take it because I was pretty sad that he was ill, you know, he was sick, you know. Now, the irony of it was, I still had my big Chevy that I was driving around in. I was going up to see a girlfriend somewhere, and I'd gone down, I was in West London, I'd gone down to this junction of this main road, and I heard this small car come up on the side of me, beep beep, the horn went, and I looked out my window and I'm staring Gene Vincent straight in the face in this car. And there's a friend of mine, Lee Tracy, was driving him and taking him to some show up north. And I rolled the window down and Gene kind of said, hi, you know, and how are you, and no hard feelings. And I said, no, and I was just kind of dumbstruck really. I was kind of like, there's Gene, and that was my last impression, because that's the last time I saw him alive. Because 3 weeks after that I listened to the radio and he died. But I knew from the experience I had had that the reasons, and his stomach problems. He was one of the icons of rock and roll from that period. Sadly, towards the end of the 50s, the USA turned their back on him. They didn't want to know. He had a lease of life again in the music by coming to England and Europe. I mean, in France he was massive, he was like a hero, and in most of Europe he was like, but England and France he was like a big name again. whether it was due to his drink problems or not, a lot of people dropped him. I don't know. Maybe that was so, but he should have got a lot more recognition. Ironically, he's getting more recognition like at the end of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st century. He's getting more recognition as a hero and one of the main icons of rock and roll now than he was then. And if Gene was alive and the Blue Caps were touring now, with the fans he's got now, I think it would be a sellout. I really do, but sadly it's too late.